Hello, I'm Kimberly Henry, and this is Living the Good Life. In this series, we'll feature conversations around ways to embrace the goodness of life and take a big, juicy bite out of it. Food for the soul and the funny bone. Learn to give more time to yourself, become a better friend, lead an amazing life, and how to tell the best joke at the party. Living the good life can mean different things to different people. Whatever it is for you, I hope you'll find some inspiration here to live your most joyful, authentic life. Now, on to today's conversation. We are so fortunate today to be speaking with Mark Kenney from Central Ohio, who oversees Healing Stream Media. It's a charitable organization that Mark has been running for 18, 19, 20 years, and a huge network of Christian radio stations reaching tens of thousands of people each month. So impressive. Years ago, Mark found himself at a weight of 500 pounds. And so that sparked for Mark an inspiring health and wellness journey that we're going to talk about today to lose the extra weight and become healthier overall. And on that journey, he became a certified personal trainer and a health and wellness guru, and has developed a passion for coaching others and is happiest when he sees other people overcoming obstacles. Mark, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it. It means a lot to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, I'm so happy to dive into your story. But first, just tell us a little bit about what's going on for you today.
Well, today, really, it's so cliche, but oh my goodness, it's so true that we're really just trying to help other people. There is such a fulfillment. I saw the cutest story. I'll tell you right off the bat here. Somebody shared a meme where a college professor took a group of, I think it was 100 or so kids, and each one of the kids put their name on a balloon, and they all put a balloon in a big hallway, and they all put their, and the professor said, go find your balloon with your name on it. And it was chaos for 5 minutes. Nobody could find anything. They were just, so then he goes, okay, wait. And he gave them a new assignment. He said, now pick up a balloon and go give it to whoever it belongs to. And within about 3 minutes, everybody had their balloon back. And he said, this is how happiness works. This is how success works. If you will focus on giving people what they need, by default, the stuff in your life will begin to come together. The success that you're chasing, you will find is actually chasing you. And that's kind of a good premise to get started with. I love being able to hand people their balloon, if you will, and watch them go, wow. I've been looking and trying to get that. And a lot of times it's just how we are as people. We want to be so self-reliant, but there's such a need within us to interact. And we really are created to interact and to need each other, at least on certain levels. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you need to be a little more humble to see that, but other times people do know that right away. And in either case, if you hand somebody their balloon, usually it's a good thing.
Oh, I love that analogy. That is beautiful. And it reminds me of the studies that have been done about the happiest people in the world. And the number one key to happiness is social interaction. Yep. Being in a social group, feeling of belonging, being in community. And that resonates with that analogy, that story that you just told. Amazing. Well, I'm glad to be in community with you. And this community, Living the Good Life, is about those pivotal moments where you find yourself standing there and going, how did I get to this place? And what do I want to create from here? And I feel like that moment in time where you found yourself at that 500 pounds and said, this has got to change. This is not exactly what I wanted to create. I need to do something different, was one of those pivotal moments. How did that go for you?
You know, there's a couple sayings I borrow generously and use on a regular basis. One of them is this: your test will become your testimony. Mm. And I have found that to be very, very true. One of the biggest challenges when people hit a real, I don't mean an uncomfortable day or a bad season, but when you run into something life altering, it can be a wall, or it can help redefine in your mind what a staircase actually looks like. And those are really your options. And for the people that it becomes a wall, then there's a struggle there. You got depression and other things. But if it redefines what a staircase is, you realize that that's not really a wall, it's actually a step. And then the introspection comes back on yourself. And if I can retrain, recondition, if I can get in touch with who I really am, this isn't a wall at all. This is an opportunity. And I think that's a key piece of what happened. In my specific case, I got married in 1991, and I was about 260 so pounds back then. And, you know, like so many people, excuse me, I tease people, I say there's a nerve in the third finger of the man that when you put a ring on it, it stimulates weight gain.
I don't think that's specific to men.
that might not be totally settled science, but it does. It was certainly true in my case. And so, you know, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary, about 10 pounds a year, maybe. So if you think about it, it's not even a pound a month. You know, very, very subtle and very incremental weight loss or weight gain, but it was weight gain no less. And as 1 year turned into 5, turned into 10, turned into 20, you know, 260 became 360, became 460, became ultimately close to 510 before it was all said and done. And, you know, again, it's the frog in the boiling water. You know, you just don't appreciate until something happens. Now, I talk about something called an illusion bubble. An illusion bubble is what people like to build for themselves. So they will kind of take something, and I don't have a good example with me, but they'll put something on their own head, and it'll only allow them to see, hear, and take in information that they pre-screen ahead of time. They want to keep their illusion intact. I'll give you some examples. People do this all the time with social media, where they really take a great picture of themselves and they look great. And so they use that on their profile. Of course, that picture was taken in, let's say, 2015.
Sure.
Or 2013. So here we are 5, 10, maybe 15 years later, but they'll still leave that picture up. And for the most common reason is because they have an illusion bubble. If they had a current picture, they would see where they really are, and they don't want to see where they really are. This is why people hate microphones. This is why people hate mirrors. This is why people don't like to come face to face with what really is there. What do I really sound like? More specifically, what do I really look like? How much fat is really on my body? You know, you'll notice, I'm not picking on anyone, and I certainly don't know who has what in the bedrooms and things where they get ready. But of those that have shared their stories, I've heard many women, especially as they get larger and they get these illusion bubbles, the mirrors, even the makeup mirrors, will get smaller and smaller and smaller.
Oh.
And they whatever they have to do to keep that illusion bubble so they don't have to face where they are. And that's where I was for years. I just would not allow myself. I had this illusion bubble in place. And like I said, 300 pounds became 400 pounds, became 500 pounds. And it was because I was veiled, or an illusion bubble was in place. I couldn't see what was really happening. And a few times people tried to intervene, but my illusion bubble wouldn't have it. And so a lot of folks are in that position. And we might even, if you think there's probably somebody we know, if you've been around like you and I have, maybe we've approached others, maybe tried to help, and, oh, I'm okay. Well, not really, but okay. You know, there's those people.
Well,
and
everybody gets to make their own choice and have their own illusion. So I do respect that.
Absolutely. Well, and I like to tell people, you know, the only lie that'll really ever hurt you is the one you believe. So, you know, it's the most powerful relationship in your life, not the easiest by all, but the most powerful is the one who can talk truth to you, who can give you something that will penetrate your illusion bubble. Those are usually mentors, not always, but usually. And a mentor is the hardest relationship by far, because they care more about your future than they do your feelings. And oh my goodness, we catch our familiarity, our security comes from our feelings. And so we have a tendency to want to push people away if they're not coming into agreement with our feelings.
Right.
But when it comes to breaking these illusion bubbles, it's all about feelings. We're trying to maintain those feelings we used to have, and it needs popped. So in my case, I came to the point where I had what doctors believe to be a stroke of some kind.
Oh,
And it left me in my entire right side paralyzed for the better part of 4 days. And they were having the tough conversations with me. They were saying, look, Mark, you're probably just going to need to adjust here. There's people just tend to not come back from stuff like this. And I didn't like that news, but that's what they were saying. And in my specific case, you talk about divine intervention. I had two amazing men of God that came and prayed for me, and God worked a creative miracle in my brain and regrew brain tissue, medically verified.
wow.
And I began to recover not only movement, but dexterity. And over the course of about 6 months, I got 100% of everything back that I had lost.
So let me just stop you and ask you, what had you lost? What did you come back from?
I was literally, when I say I was paralyzed, I don't mean I couldn't move a hand or a foot. The entire right half of my body was gone. I didn't have taste on the right half of my tongue.
Oh, that must have been strange.
If I was in the shower, I could feel the water temperature on my left side, but not on my right side.
Wow. But there could you walk? Could you? No. Wow.
I just use the shower example for a point of reference. I was never walking around in the shower at that point.
Okay.
I wasn't doing anything but laying in a bed because I couldn't even get up. There was my right side was useless. The whole right half of me.
Okay. And you came back from that.
Came all the way back. And it wasn't just, a temporary thing. It was, almost 4 full days of that.
Okay.
And then after 10 days being in the hospital, they had moved me to a different hospital with a therapy gym when I started to recover, and they kept running. They were just, I was the pincushion because nobody understood what was happening to me. They were desperately seeking. They wanted to understand, which makes sense because there's a lot of other people in those positions. And what's happening with this guy? Can we duplicate it? Can we help others? And what's happening? And I remember the cardiologist, or not the cardiologist, the neurologist at the time. He says, Mark, this guy had been doing this for 20 some years at this point. He said, not my first day out, I've seen a lot of this stuff. Nobody comes back from this stuff, and you're coming back. And I remember he said, you can thank whatever God you believe in, because it's not something that we've done here. And he had, they had done several brain scans and dye-induced scans and MRI stuff. And they took so many pictures of my brain, but he had a before and after. And he showed me the ventricles in my brain, and he showed me the tissue that was dead and then now grown back over just a couple of days, and some miraculous level stuff that had taken place. But Kim, all that to say, that's amazing and it's wonderful, but I still was faced with, and I began to lose weight in the hospital, and I think I got down to about 495 from maybe 510, 515, somewhere in that range. It was a bed scale. They weigh you on the bed,
Sure.
But once I finally got out, once I started to stand up, and they were scared, and I don't blame them. I said, I want to stand up. You can't stand up. I said, no, I feel like I can stand up. And they go, no. If you fall down, nobody can pick you back up. You're a very, very large man.
Right.
We do that. We need like several staff members. We're still not sure we could pick you up. I said, I know me. I'm going to stand up. And so I began to stand up, and I began to, waddle a little bit. There were blood pressure issues. There was all kinds of side issues along the way. But at the end of the day, I began to just catch fire. I began to catch a glimpse. Now, hear this. I began to catch a glimpse of who I really was created to be, instead of the person I had chose to settle for.
I love that.
I began to believe the things that God was saying to me about me. And if you have rejection, if you have self-hatred, if you have other issues, you can even be powerful. You can help as many, but you won't believe it about yourself. The illusion bubble has to be popped. And if the illusion bubble can be popped, the first thing you'll see differently, you say, how do I know if the illusion bubble popped? You will see the person in the mirror as a completely different person than you saw before.
Yeah.
When
Do
that
you
took place,
remember a moment in time that you felt that or saw that?
like it was yesterday, if I live to be 300 years old, I will never forget the moment. The Holy Spirit spoke to me directly, which I know is controversial in some circles. And by saying that, I'm sure I've lost some of the audience, but
This is your story. We're here for your story.
And anyway, he just spoke real clearly to me, and he said two things. He said, Mark, your choices have put you here. Now, I'll tell you the other thing he said behind that, but let me first tell you, I fought that. I don't think to this day I've ever heard anything rougher. When I say rough, it wasn't mean. It was just hard for me to admit, because if you'd asked me back then, I could have given you a very long list of people that had done me wrong, people that had come against me, people that lied about me. And I said, my choices put me here. What about this person? What about that person? Well, when I was little, this happened, all these things. Now, watch. God was speaking a truth to me. I was speaking back to him my truth.
Right.
He was speaking his truth. And you have to come to a place where you use your mental faculty of choice to decide which truth is going to remain yours.
Mm-hmm.
And if you keep your version of truth, or what you believe to be right, he loves you enough, he'll let you keep that. He doesn't want it for you, but he'll let that happen. And we probably have all known many people that have, made those poor choices. But what he had, I shared with you earlier, and that was my moment when I said, okay, this is either a wall or this is a new staircase.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, your choices have put you here. I'm going to freshly anoint your choices, Mark, and your choices are going to now take you back up out of here. And that was the moment. Everything changed. And I realized that I was not here on the earth just for myself. I was actually here because there were other plans. And he showed me several things that night. It was a very powerful night, one of the most powerful nights of my life. But as I began to yield, as I began to get humble, as I allowed that needle, if you will, to pop that illusion bubble, the first person's opinion that changed wasn't the list of people that had done me wrong. It was myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had to see, okay. And let me just make a passing note, since it is my story. For those that are in the faith of some kind, there's a little bit of a misunderstanding, I think, that comes. As Christians, I don't know about you, I was taught as a youngster, we were taught to deny ourselves. And that teaching can sometimes go so far across the board that you actually get into hating yourself. You actually get into not paying attention to yourself, not taking care of yourself, all under the guise of denying yourself. There are most certainly times to move in self-control.
Mm-hmm.
No one's going to dispute that. I'm not talking about that. But when it goes off the rails, and in many circles it can, and in my life it certainly was.
Yeah.
I was under the impression, I was ministering this whole time. You mentioned early on in my introduction, you had these radio stations going on. We're touching thousands of people. We were chatting and ministering. I was going to conferences. I was doing all this stuff. Huge guy, but I was doing all these things. But I still had these illusion bubbles in place.
Yeah.
So I was powerful for others, but not for myself.
Let's unpack a little bit, because I think you're right. I mean, that is definitely a crisis. That crisis is a strong word, that happens in faith-based communities. But this feeling of not putting yourself first, denying yourself, poor self-esteem, even, that can happen in any setting. So anybody who's listening has probably experienced that in their life. Sure. Women particularly are renowned for that. At least that's what's talked about, is women's perception that they have to put everybody else first and that their needs are not important. I suspect that happens in men more than we realize. We just don't talk about it much. And so what you're saying is really applicable to a broader audience, no matter where they're at in their belief system or faith journey, I think.
And whether you believe Jesus to be the Messiah or not, the quote that he gives, and I use all the time, is the whole of the law, 600 plus life laws, is to love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yes.
And almost universally, all across every religion, they say, oh yes, that's exactly, we want to love other people. But don't graze over that. The key is the back part of that verse, as you love yourself.
You love yourself. Yes.
So listen, the key to loving other people is not self-denial. The key to loving other people is loving yourself.
Yes.
And in Christian circles, at least I was, and several that I know over the years, we were taught to not love yourself. In fact, if you're involved, we mislabel that as flesh, and we want that to get out of the way.
Yeah.
It's just not true. I would even go so far, and this sometimes gets me in a little trouble, but I would go so far as to suggest that you can't give yourself to Jesus as a Christian until you have yourself sorted out to give. I'm not saying you have to get ready. You don't have to clean up to take a bath. He accepts you just as you are. But you at least have to know at some level that you're a person, that you're an individual, and that you matter enough that he died in your place. And you got to have those core things, I think, in place. So anyway.
Let's get back to how you kind of pivoted from that point once you had that moment, that realization, that conversation.
Well, in my case, he just laid out this path and showed me that I'd be helping, many, many people get healthier, losing weight, doing all these things. And I thought I intercepted a memo for somebody else.
Oh, interesting.
Because I thought, oh, you must be talking to somebody in a different room. Maybe I had bad food here or something. I couldn't possibly be hearing from the Lord. I'm laying here. I'm hundreds of pounds overweight. The last thing I'm ever going to do is help anybody. But he said no. And he reminded me what he said earlier. I'm going to put a fresh anointing on your choices. And that's my message ultimately to everybody watching today. Your choices can change your future.
Yes.
With rare exception, your choices that you made yesterday have created your today. And the choices that you make today are creating your tomorrow. And the choices you make today and tomorrow are creating your entire future. Mm-hmm. And while we're on it, I'll just tell you that the secret to your future success is hidden in your daily routine.
Yes.
If I can follow you for 48, 72 hours, I can pinpoint the habits and things in your life that are destructive and that are working against you. And I can pinpoint the stuff that if you increase and do better, you'll do. It's not science. It's not hard. It's not, it's very simple at the root.
It's simple logically, but I think it is difficult for a lot of us to make that shift in our actuality, in reality, because it's habits, and habits are ingrained. They're like muscle memory.
Well, and Kim, one of the things I've learned is that the human mind, in my opinion, because we're fallen, but regardless of why, the mind is triggered to be protective. Mm. And if you don't feel that you're protected, then the part of the brain that wants to be creative will never surface and flourish. So the first primary, no matter who you are, you're always going to be concerned with protection. Mm-hmm. Why is that important? Because if you look at lifestyle choices, the first thing the mind's going to do, you're going to say, for example, well, I'm going to start a new workout, but let me go join a gym, just to throw something out there.
Right.
And then the first thing the mind's going to do is, well, that's $40 a month or whatever. Maybe you might not be able to afford that. You shouldn't do that. Your mind in protective mode will talk you out.
Yes.
Of whatever you were going to do. And it can be as simple as, well, let me go for a walk in the woods. And then your mind, well, you might run into a wild animal. There's always going to be, and for, if you're not very versed, if you don't feel protected, maybe you're not in the best neighborhood. Well, I don't want to go for a walk because I might run into somebody. Your mind is always going to try to protect you.
Yes.
And you have to outsmart that. You have to be wiser than your own self-protection mechanism. And I believe that's the role that wisdom is to come and play in our lives.
Yes.
Wisdom will set healthy boundaries and protect us while allowing creativity to flow. So in my case, to answer your question originally, I began to allow creativity, and my creative thought processes began to inspire my future. My future began to be bigger than me than I ever thought it could be.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this ministry and all these things going on. And suddenly I realized, you know what, that's wonderful. And we still do that to this day. And I love it. But all that's automated now. All that kind of does itself, because the creative part of who I am works with people one-on-one to bring them into different levels and layers of freedom in their thinking. People often ask, can you help me lose weight? I say, of course, but that's not even your real question. The real question is, am I willing to, can you give me access to your mind? If you can let me help you change your thinking, then you will help you lose weight. It's really about the mental roadblocks that we put up in our own minds. If I can help you get over those, yeah, of course you can lose weight. I don't care who you are.
Yeah. I am totally all about that mindset, but I'm also dying to know the nuts and bolts pieces of how this all progressed. So did you make a specific decision at some point that I'm here as far as my weight is concerned, or my health, and I want to be here, and this is how I'm going to get there? How did that go for you?
So I know that what you just described has worked for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be in favor of anyone watching that wanted to take that type of a approach. There are certain personality types, for example, that would be the way to go for sure.
Yes.
I'm in no way opposed to what you just said. For me personally, it wasn't that way.
Okay.
For me personally, I became almost obsessed, might be a wrong word to use, but probably obsessed with becoming who I really was.
Okay.
Becoming who I really am. And I realized, I'll never forget when the Lord showed me, I was looking in the mirror one time, I was down to, as I started to lose weight originally, I think I was down around 430, 440. And the Lord said, you know, there's a professional athlete in you. And I said, did I eat him by accident? You know, but I understood what he was saying.
Yeah.
You know, there's a, and I remember, because obviously through the health situation I was in, I was constantly meeting with doctors and cardiologists and things, and they were watching me pretty close. And but when they gave me the green light and said, you know, your heart and your lungs are fine, you can push, you can do, boy, that's what I needed to hear. And I began to realize, and maybe this is the nuts and bolts you're talking about, my human body and the fat that had collected under my skin over top of my body, but under my skin, I began to see those as two different things.
Yes. I identify with that for sure. Say that again, just so that anyone who hasn't gotten there yet.
I have a human body, but then I also have skin covering that body, holding it all together. And in between my body and my skin, I have a collection of extra tissue that is fat. Mm-hmm. That fat is not part of my body.
Yeah.
I can add to that collection by overeating. I can burn it off and get rid of it, and it doesn't impact. In fact, if I get rid of it, it'll help my body. It's not part of my body. Mm-hmm. So I began to see it, and this is kind of a little bit of a gross example, but I think it'll help people. If you looked at your arm, okay, and if hang with me, don't turn me off. If you saw a little cockroach or a little animal just under your skin.
Oh, lovely.
You see what I'm saying? That's gross. And be, oh my gosh. But here, let me just ask you, would you look at that and go, oh, I need to make an appointment at the doctor and take care of that at some point next week? No, your life would stop. Everything would stop. And you would be like that. You'd almost probably, claw at yourself. That would have to go. Mm-hmm. Why? Why? Because it doesn't belong.
Right.
It's not, hear me, it's not who you are.
Right.
Not part of you. It really is an invader, really, that now I'm not going to talk about the bug anymore, but fat is what I'm talking about. It really is an invader that we've been tricked ultimately by several factors to allow it to invade and come into our lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, it
It's
is.
not
I mean, it's a sneaky invader in that a certain amount of fat is critical to our well-being. And so,
to the tiny
yeah,
portion of the population that can get their body fat percentage down to a point where that's a concern, I would agree.
right.
But my goodness, overwhelmingly, we're
Yeah,
talking the mass general public, what, 97, 98% at least of us would probably not have to worry about that.
right.
You know,
Right. Right. It's the challenge is that mindset of, well, I need some fat. And then, okay, at what point is it too much? And I think that's different for different people, but your reasoning definitely still stands.
well, and again, I just was talking about what worked for me. I felt like that was
Yes.
kind of what I saw. And so
Yeah.
I began to be not mad at myself, but I began to proactively push to get rid of what I had done. Remember, in my case, I'd felt like I was told that my choices were going to recreate my life.
Yes.
And I would tell everyone listening to this show that your choices can recreate your life.
Yes.
No matter how frustrated you are, no matter how many hundreds of times you might have started, no matter what else might be true, we don't even need to talk about those things. What
Yeah.
matters is from here today forward, from this moment, you might have just overeaten before you logged on to watch this.
Hmm.
It's okay. What matters is from here forward.
Hmm.
So from this moment forward, you have a fresh option. Sometimes I'll tell people you are one choice away from your next victory.
Yes.
That's all it is.
Yes.
And a choice here with a choice with another choice, and your choices will begin to compound. Those of you that are in finance, you understand the concept of compounded interest.
Yes.
And if you're on the right side of that, you're in a good place.
What do
On the
you
wrong
what
side
do
of that, you're in
you
a bad place. But
think about those and like your self-described life before was that I can't remember the term that you used, but you just kind of settled, I think is what you said.
well,
So you weren't necessarily making choices at that point in time, right?
no, and in fact, my choices were made for me. I had surrendered them.
Yes.
To talk about that, I'm going to have to get into something that maybe you want us to. I'm not sure. I guess you could edit it out if not, but
I try not to do that, Mark. So let's you be honest and real and let us know.
people have developed an affinity or an affection toward limbo, or
Yes.
basically toward indecision.
Mm-hmm.
And indecision is an empowerment for those that embrace it. Especially if you feel like you're in a lose-lose situation, you will embrace indecision. And indecision, fewer things can put the people around you through a lot of pain, suffering, trial, and tribulation than you being in indecision. And if you've got a family member then you already know. If you have a family member that struggles in indecision, but limbo, indecision. And here's the cold reality about indecision is a decision.
Yes.
It's just handing the reins of that decision to someone else, because no matter what we're talking about, if you won't make the decision, eventually someone else will on your behalf. So your limbo, your indecision, surrenders your authority, surrenders your ability to choose. And it's a kicker because usually it's based in fear. People are afraid to make decisions. People are afraid to move forward. That's where I was.
Mm-hmm.
So 30 some years of my life, I just didn't want to make decisions about myself. Whatever was there, I just went with. I was very passive in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Limbo was my friend.
Mm-hmm.
At 300 pounds, limbo took me and helped me get to 400 pounds. Limbo helped me get to 500 pounds. Perhaps the biggest change I made altogether, Kim, was I stopped being indecisive.
Awesome.
And I began to live on purpose. Now, in my personal case, that was intervention from the Spirit of God. In somebody else's case, maybe they run into somebody there could be 100, breakthrough moments there. But that's what happens. The fruit of the popping of the illusion bubble is the release of indecision.
Right. Now,
And
I derailed you into this conversation about choice and limbo. And we were getting to nuts and bolts. So I don't want to leave that off the table. And so I'm wondering if we can get back over there.
Sure.
We could talk all day, I know.
Right. Well, specifically, and you can get into the mechanics of, do you count calories?
Right.
Do you watch your heart rate? There's a lot of things that are always good to do. But there's a Bible verse I love. It says, the law is a schoolmaster that leads to grace. And I'm going to tell you, if you can be freed up to the point where you can truly love yourself, just like Jesus loves you, or whatever you want to call it, but if you can truly love yourself, the desire to harm yourself will release. And overeating is self-harm. Let me just let that settle into some people. Overeating is self-harm. And when you love yourself, you will come to a place where you no longer want to harm yourself. And this is what will go through your mind. You want to get grassroots or nuts and bolts. When the next time you're at a restaurant and you're looking at a menu, this needs to be the thought that comes into your mind. I know what I'm hungry for. There's nothing wrong with being hungry for something, but generally the amounts of whatever it is, does what I'm hungry for harm myself in some way? And that factor begins to be considered. And, well, maybe I'm not in the mood to go for an hour-long walk tonight. Well, who hasn't been there? But maybe it's not about your mood. Maybe if I love my body enough, I understand that it's not because I'm not going because I'm in the mood to go. I'm going because my body needs that. And I love it enough to maintain the maintenance, to take care of it. So my in a very real way, my motivation shifts. And love begins to motivate me to eat right, to do right, to do the things I'm supposed to do, not out of a sense of obligation, because the law leads us to grace. We come to a place where I love me now. I want me to be right. I want me to embrace the three things we talked about at the beginning. I want me to be healthy. I want me to be well, and I want to be fit. And if those three things are true, if I love myself, then I'm going to want to pursue those things. So perhaps a good challenge for some, if you just can't find the handle, if you're just not motivated, if you can't put down the extra quart of ice cream, whatever it might be, then perhaps there needs to be an honest conversation with somebody in your life who cares, who you can trust, about, is there some residual self-hatred? Is there some, is there something that not allowing you to really deeply love yourself like you really could or should? In my case, and I'm actually in the middle of writing my book on this, my book is called Starving Rejection. And I had to, in my case, that's what the Lord broke off my life. It was a spirit of rejection that had led me down the path. And that rejection was making choices on my behalf because I gave it permission to through my indecision. And the indecision just allowed, because again, I said it before, I'll say it again. Your indecision, it feels like you're in charge when you go, I'm not going to decide right now. Makes it feel like you're in charge, but you're not. You're tricking yourself. You're lying to yourself. You're not really in. You're giving that choice to somebody else.
Someone that I really respect talks about discipline is holding on to the things that you plan, that you promise to yourself, even when you don't feel like it. And that's self-love too, I think.
Sure.
If you make a decision of this is what's best for me, and you can remember when you're in the moment that it's a loving act to do, even if it doesn't feel right.
Well, and let me tell you that this is the number one thing that comes, or well, maybe not number one, most often thing brought up for sure, is this whole issue of motivation, what you feel like. So people say all the time, how do you control your feelings? Well, you can't. There's not a direct tie, but there is an indirect tie that will very much help you. And here it is. Your feelings are always at the mercy of your focus. So you can't control your feelings directly, but you absolutely can control your focus.
Good point.
And so the choice, let's say I'm sitting around and poor me, and let me eat this and do that, and make some bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that I'm thinking about making bad decisions isn't because of my feelings. That's where, again, my mind plays with me. Got to watch that. It's not you're not feeling bad because of your own bad decisions. Stop blaming yourself.
Right.
Your focus, in most cases, is either on something that happened that you didn't like in the past, or that's where anxiety comes from, when you get ahead of the moment and you start going through hypothetical things that you think are going to go wrong in the future. That brings anxiety. You start reliving things in the past that happened. Now you've got depression. But if you can stay true to your authentic self and live right here in the moment and focus on, you know what, tomorrow's going to be a lot better because of the choices I make right now. Now, suddenly I have motivation because, wow, if I don't eat this, for example, and I do go for that walk, then I may be half pound or a pound lighter tomorrow. I'm going to really like that. And you see that you begin to reform your thinking patterns. Once that illusion bubble pops, all kinds of wonderful and beautiful things can begin to happen.
Have you experienced this, that just becoming healthier, making better or different food choices, not overeating, generally just makes you feel better physically? And if you fall off the wagon, so to speak, you can feel that in your body within the next 24 hours.
I'm a huge believer that there's a direct connection between your mind, your body, your soul, your spirit. I think it all ties together. And when something's wrong somewhere, it can easily lead to something being wrong everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So, Mark, what does a day in eating look like for you now versus before?
Before, I've shared these before and people just don't even believe it, but it's absolutely true. I would go, I'd get up. My wife at the time would make probably a 12, 13 egg omelet and we would buy blocks.
12, 13 egg omelet?
Yeah, like
okay.
Most people buy eggs by the dozen. That would be one omelet at our house.
Wow. Okay.
And, the small egg saucer pans that sometimes you see, we didn't own any of those. All of our pans were huge.
Okay.
We would buy cheese by the block, not by the slice. We would get pizza. We had 2 and then later 3 small kids. And so the kids would all split a pizza. My wife would usually get a sub or a salad or something. And I would get my own large pizza and my own sub and my own 6 or 12 pack of pop.
Wow.
To go with it.
Okay.
I would go to restaurants, and I would go so often to certain restaurants around that waitresses would get to know me. They would bring, and I always tipped well, but that was the only good thing happening back then. But at least I took care of the staff. But they would bring me pitchers of whatever I was drinking, not even glasses. And sometimes restaurants will bring you bread or something like that. Restaurants would bring me 2-3 loaves of bread at a time, just as appetizers. And
did you know that was maybe different than what was going on at other tables? Did you have a sense of that?
No. And again, the reason I didn't know that is because, number one, I had an illusion bubble. And number two, my indecision had surrendered to rejection. So I wasn't making those decisions. I would literally eat this way and I'd be miserable. I'd be so full. I wouldn't want anything, but I was driven to keep going because I had surrendered that choice.
Okay.
So somebody else say, "Hey, you sure you want that?" Yes. It wasn't even me answering. It was rejection in me that was answering.
Okay.
Say, okay. And of course, people, what are they going to do? You're telling them yes. Out of your mouth comes the word yes. And so, so they bring you whatever. And so then, I'd eat all that stuff. I'd eat these huge steaks and, a couple potatoes and whatever else. And then on the way home, stop by McDonald's.
Wow.
And then, you go through McDonald's, and of course you get a Diet Coke because in your mind, I'll get a diet drink. Which there's
so
nothing more than healthy.
why add more calories with your soda, right?
Well, and with the aspartame and the Diet Coke, that almost certainly led to
Right.
the stroke I had. But anyway, so there's just all these kinds of things. And then, you're always ashamed, as there's always shame in it. You always say,
Yes.
well, so I remember oftentimes I would take and I would go through McDonald's or Burger King or one of these places, and I would take the trash and I would make sure I threw it away before I got back home. Now, here's the thing. Nobody cared. Nobody was going through my car. Nobody cared. But it was such a personal point of shame. I didn't want to be reminded that I had just failed in
Right.
that way. And what was I really didn't fail because I overate. I really failed because I gave away my choice.
Right. Right.
And
And
so
that it's a symptom of the
yeah,
overeating's a symptom of other things that are going
correct.
on. Absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like I want to make sure I mention, Kim, that there's undoubtedly somebody that's watching us that says, well, I trust God to keep me healthy. And I have heard this repeatedly from 300 plus pound people.
Yes.
Having watched a number of those larger people in my life over the years die early, I can tell you that we're all sustained by the Lord ultimately, but he honors your choices. And the cemetery is full, to be frank, with people that have died 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years too early. That they just, they were taken out by their own indecision.
Mm-hmm.
They just surrendered that, and they just continued to take their lead from other either spirits or other things in their life, rejection, abandonment, abuses, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
But those scars bleed over so much that they began to take over and make decisions on behalf of the person. And
Right.
when you surrender your decision through limbo, when your decision is surrendered through limbo, that's what happens. You don't actually, it makes you feel like you're in control by saying, no, I don't want to make a decision. But indecision is decision. You just surrender it to somebody else. And
Right.
in this world, you surrender it, the restaurants are going to keep feeding you.
Yes.
Society is going to keep mocking you. People are going to keep pushing down on you till you're depressed. You're going to keep overeating, and you're going to eventually die early. You got to somehow say, enough's enough. I'm not mad at anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody, but I'm going to start to love me.
Yes. Yeah.
And when
Absolutely.
that happens, everything changes for the better.
And so when you do that and you start eating differently, moving differently, what does that look like?
Well, I appreciate that redirect, because I mentioned how I used to eat, and I'm nothing like that now. When I eat, and if I get an omelet, I have 2 eggs. If I get, I got to tell you, I used to eat cereal by the box.
Mm.
Okay. Now I almost never eat cereal anymore because it's so processed. But if I do eat cereal, we buy bowls that are actually, I should have brought one to show you, but they're smaller than the average bowl. There's some real science and psychology behind plate sizing. If you have a big plate in front of you, you will want a lot of food on that plate. If you have a small plate, you'll want less plate. So a nice cheat that I can offer people, it's really not a cheat, it's just science. Buy smaller glasses, buy smaller plates, buy smaller bowls.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to get like a little teeny something. You can go smaller in increments, but yeah, don't drink your calories. Whenever possible, don't drink calories. Eat your calories. Get in the habit. I'm going to tell you a cheat you can use at restaurants. Order what I call a fruity water. Ask the server, because almost no one will charge you for a water, so it's cheaper anyway. But say, hey, can you take that through the bar, and just a little bit of all the fruit in the bar? And if it's a bar thing, then they'll have oranges, cherries, mint leaves, grapes, perhaps. There's all kinds of things people put in their drink to garnish drinks with, and they'll shove all that stuff in the water, and it's wonderful. You don't even think you're drinking water. Plus, it looks great. It lightens up the table, and it's a great conversation piece if you're out with somebody that you want. And there's no calorie. I mean, we got 10 calories in the fruit, maybe a little piece of pineapple or something, got 5 or 10 calories, but you're not drinking your calories.
Yeah. Love that.
If you're a sweet tea person, I know that's blasphemy in some circles, Get to where you are doing unsweetened tea.
I'm
Stop.
not a sweet tea person. I love unsweetened tea, but I do have a sweet tea that I drink that's non-caloric, and it's
Yeah.
amazing.
So, get yourself to a place where you're
Not
not.
aspartame though.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing I would mention is sugar is your enemy.
Yeah.
It is you're never, people have said, I'm not going to eat any more sugar. It's not reality, but you can definitely begin to choose against the extra stuff.
Yeah.
If you've got a choice of a couple, 3 different things, take the one with the least sugar.
Mhm.
I'll say this. I've been debated. I've gotten into lots of fights over this online, but I still believe it. I believe that the sugar that you consume, if it's more, because you can burn off sugar pretty easily if you're active.
Right.
But if you're overeating on sugar, so I want to be clear with this, if you overeat on sugar, it's just as dangerous as some of the more dangerous artificial sweeteners.
Yes.
So when you are, well, this is sugar free. Well, that's fine. But if it's the 4,000th calorie of the day, it's just, you might as well eat the regular sugar. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to be mindful too.
Yeah. I'm totally a total proponent of avoiding fat-free, sugar-free, pre-processed stuff.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, because I think you'll find other things in there that are just as detrimental to your health, for sure.
No question. And it's like anything else, common sense, be led. If you are loving yourself, those of you that have kids, I have 3 kids. If you have kids, be mindful, not just I'm not trying to give this spiel about, your kids are paying attention. Of course they are. But if you were in charge of teaching them, like literally teaching them how to love themselves, not just how to feed themselves, but how to love themselves, what example are you setting? If you're out to eat with them, don't just go, well, I want this and this and this and this. Think that through. If you love yourself and you're teaching them how to love themselves, what will your food look like? These are things that you should stop and think about. Now, if you've got an illusion bubble in place, you won't even be on your radar.
It may, but it may look like snacks and treats and things because that's what the kids want, and you love them, so you're going to give that to them to make them happy. And that's something I think we all need to examine. And I'm guilty of it with my grandkids as much as anybody, because it's hard sometimes when they have in their mental bubble that McDonald's is the best meal ever. Then
right.
It's hard to
we did
have that conversation sometimes.
What I started to do when our boys were younger, I would tell them, because they would say, well, we want to do that. Let's say they want to go to McDonald's. I'd say, okay, well, here's the thing about, man, and we just point blank say, McDonald's is very bad for you. It's very unhealthy. There's really no redeeming value. We'll do it every once in a while because we know you enjoy it. Yeah. But like anything in life, excess is a bad thing in these areas. So we're not going to tell you we're never going to go, but we'll go. But understand, as you grow and as you get going, this is not something you want to make a regular thing. So we didn't forbid it, but we just were very practical and very honest about what it really was. And then we had the similar conversations at the grocery store. Now, this stuff might not be your favorite thing to eat, but man, your body's going to love you, and we began to really train in that direction. And if I showed you pictures of my kids today, you'd be like, wow, because they are beasts. They are cut.
Nice.
I've not measured them, but I think they're probably around 6 or 7% body fat, the 2 oldest ones. Mm-hmm. And they both are just, cut and they take very good care of themselves. It's because from the time they were little, we were drilling these things into these concepts. They're on the world's best supplements. They take care of themselves.
Well, you mentioned supplements. So, and we were talking about kind of what your dietary habits are today. Are you on a program? Are you on supplements? Are you eating real food? Are you eating shakes and bars? What does that entail?
The term shakes and bars, there's hundreds and hundreds of options with shakes and bars. And I would I would soundly reject almost all of those.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're back to the processed stuff. We want to kind of avoid that when possible. I'm eating real food, and let's define that. I remember a meme years ago that said, eat organic, or as your grandparents called it, real food.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, there's a lot of truth to that. When you talk about real food, you got to have an honest conversation about soil depletion and minerals not in the ground that were there even a generation ago, let alone 2 generations ago, from over
Right.
farming and mass production and other things. And so that, you need twice or 3 times the calories worth of healthy food today just to get the micronutrients out of them than our parents needed, or their parents needed. So it's very difficult to be calorie sensitive and still getting the nutrition you need. So this led me to supplements. And there's people can connect with you or with me. I know we both enjoy the same supplement company, and we're not here to talk about that.
Right.
But let me just tell you that I found one supplement in the entire world. Thankfully, it's not very expensive, but I found one that actually bypasses crystallization in the small intestine and allows absorption to take place, so your body can actually get the micronutrients that it needs. And when I discovered that, I was like, sweet. And the beautiful part about getting 100% plus and absorbing the micronutrients on a daily basis, twice a day, is because now I can make food choices for real food or otherwise, and I don't have to consider where the micronutrients are coming from because I've already got that covered.
Mm-hmm.
So now I just need to look at proteins and fibers and other macronutrients, because all those dozens of micronutrients are all taken care of twice a day. And it's just a wonderful thing. And I know we're coming out of a COVID season here, and there's lots of immune health issues out there. I want to say the last time I was sick was 2012, 2013, somewhere in that range. Very rarely do I get sick, but it's because when you consistently give your body the love that it deserves, then you're going to change how you view what you put in it.
Yes. And then what you put in it is going to love you back. That's how I
Let me tell
like
you,
think
as
of
a
it.
side, what you'll never hear from somebody who gets this, you'll never hear, well, I don't know if I can afford something. Really? If you truly get it, then you're going to understand you're investing in your future. How much is it worth to stay out of the hospital? How much is it worth to live an extra 10, 20 years? How much? Well, I don't know, whatever, 15, 20 bucks a month. Well, I don't have that. Come on, it's just silly. It's just foolish. You
Well,
love
it's
yourself.
choices.
You'll prioritize what you need to prioritize.
Yes, exactly. It's just your choices. And if you're happy living the way that you're living, then that is your choice as well. But I know most people really are, and people who are listening to this show are wanting to have a life of vitality, a vibrant life, a good life, as we say.
Absolutely.
So I think your words are landing for sure.
Well, and I would just, as we tend to wrap up here, I just want to encourage people that there's kind of a fluff in some circles out there with, you should feel good about yourself. You should feel good about yourself, but that's not my message.
Right.
My message is that loving yourself is the master key to really fixing all of this. And that every bit as much as feeling good about yourself is going to mean that you're going to set some fresh new boundaries mentally, emotionally, physically, perhaps in some cases. Your boundaries, the difference between people are the boundaries they set. There's a woman I was talking to a while back, and she said, I think we should treat everybody the same. And I said, interesting. Do you cook breakfast for the neighbor's husband? She, oh, no. Oh, okay. So maybe we shouldn't treat everybody just the same. Maybe there is some differences. Oh, okay. I get it. Yeah. All right, good. It's the same type of thing. There's never a sillier thing when you think about it. We never treat anybody the same. Our kids have deeper access to us than other people's kids.
Mm-hmm.
if
And
you're
even
married,
your individual children are different relationships.
depending on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Every relationship in your life has a different dynamic. So
Mm-hmm.
this notion, it's a political statement ultimately. Well, everybody needs to be treated the same. Nonsense. Do you need open heart surgery if there's nothing wrong with you?
Right.
Well, the old guy down the street had it, so let's treat everybody the same. You see, it's just silly. We all know
Right.
that it's instinctive that it's silly. So let's just admit that it's silly and not go there. Instead, let's make a more true statement. And that is that our choices are going to determine the level of good life we're able to live.
Yes.
Okay. And there are accidents and subtle things, and maybe disease sneaks in. There's other things that maybe we don't have direct control over it. I'm not talking about those things, but my goodness, there's a lot that we do. Most of it we can control.
We can, and we can control our response to those things that are out of our control.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that handing that back to yourself, to your true, authentic core self. And for some people that'll require, let me say this. If you spend more money on your car than you do your brain, don't be surprised when your car runs better than your brain does. There's an interesting dialect. Somebody asked me about therapy once, and I said, everybody should at least once in a while go get some therapy. There's nothing wrong with even if there's nothing, if you feel there's no need, then that's okay. Do you go to the doctor's office once a year for a checkup? There's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, mental health is an entirely different conversation.
Right.
But all I will say about it is just you need to come to a place where you love yourself. It's the key to loving others. It's the key to healthy lifestyle choices. It's the key to everything else. And there could be 100 possibilities as to why you don't. There could be 100 possibilities to why you do on some levels and not others. If a therapist can help you sort that out, that's money well spent.
Excellent. Excellent conversation today, Mark. I am so glad that we could spend this time together. I feel like that you've helped so many people at least question their mindset and the choices they want to make for their lives. So thank you. Much gratitude. I would love for you to share any way for folks to get a hold of you if they so desire.
Sure. The easiest way is to go to my website. It's markkenneyblog.com, markkenneyblog.com. I am on social media. I'm a little harder to find though, but if you message me or friend me, I'll certainly say hi. But yeah, that's a good way. You can also email me at markkenney888@gmail.com. So markkenneyblog.com, markkenney888@gmail.com, either way.
Excellent. And we'll include that in our show notes as well, so folks can look that up. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. Mark Kenney, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Kim. I appreciate it.
Have an amazing day. Be sure to check the show notes for links mentioned in this episode and join us in the Living the Good Life Facebook community for previews of each episode, the opportunity to pose questions directly to our guests, bonus content, and a community of people committed to living their best life and sharing the journey. Thanks for listening. Let us know what value you received from this episode and what you'd like us to explore in the future in the comments. And please take a moment to drop us a like or some stars. I'm Kimberly Henry. Let's get out there and live the good life.